Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Hi, folks. Welcome back. I'm showing this picture here. It's a picture of some slaves in the South of the United States for those of you outside the U.S. And this is a clip from Reid, who I call Joyless Reid, who's had everything handed to her, and she's African-American, who's had everything handed to her. I think she went to Yale or Harvard, free ride the whole way. Now making millions of dollars on MSNBC, which is worse than CNN. And that's a pretty high bar. Talking about the immunity case with the Supreme Court. Why does Trump need immunity, or any future president, from doing things as president? And she lists off some of the things the presidents have done in the past, like Andrew Jackson, Harry Truman, Abraham Lincoln, and so on. And she implies very strongly that none of those were charged with crimes, either civil suits or criminal suits. It's amazing to me she uses the example that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves in rebellion. Of course, later the 13th Amendment was passed, and didn't pay the slaveholders. She said, why wasn't he prosecuted for that, implying that presidents can do just about anything. Let's check this out. Now, here's Joyless Reid from MSNBC talking about, they're freaking out about SCOTUS granting Trump immunity for official acts. Those are things that were done while he was president. And it's just amazing to me, absolutely astounding, how bad these people are. Let's listen.
And the last thing I will say is that they repeatedly call for boldness and decisive action, that we need to see boldness and decisive action. And that
what she's talking about is the Supreme Court said a president won't be bold and do decisive action, knowing that he or she might be prosecuted later when they're out of office.
Only absolute immunity and presumed immunity can give a president such boldness. One wonders then how previous presidents have figured out how to implement the Trail of Tears and force indigenous people to march along with enslaved people across this country mainly.
Now, indigenous people, that's Andrew Jackson, I believe. Across this country, a lot of them died with slaves. What she didn't say is the indigenous people that were marching, they were the indigenous people's slaves. She left that part out because, remember, if you're non-white and you have slaves, you're okay. But if you're white and have slaves, your morals are just wrecked, and you're a terrible, horrible human being. But if you're a non-white person and has slaves, okay, that's the way it was back then. Let's listen on to this imbecile.
To their deaths. How President Lincoln essentially deleted the human property, $10 billion worth of human property from every state in rebellion by fiat. How
$10 billion worth of slaves they took away by fiat. Obviously, it's the Emancipation Proclamation. How did he do it without getting charged? I'll give you the answer at the end. She's going to pick Harry Truman next. So far, Andrew Jackson, the Trail of Tears, and she uses the emancipation of slaves in rebellion in the South and says, how come Lincoln wasn't charged for $10 billion worth of assets, human being assets? This woman is incredible. Let's listen on.
Presidents, let's talk about the presidents in the 20th century. Harry Truman unleashed a nuclear holocaust on two parts of Japan.
Second of all, or third of all in this case, it wasn't a nuclear holocaust. It was 2 atomic bombs, and much less lethal than the nuclear weapons we have today. Much less destructive back then. And it made the Japanese capitulate and surrender, saving, they estimate, between 5 and 10 times as many people that died in those 2 cities. Now, they firebombed Tokyo, and most of the buildings are made out of wood, caused much more damage and harm to human life than the atomic weapons. It's just amazing to me. Why didn't Harry Truman get brought up on charges? There are people that wanted to, and there's people that want to today. Think that Harry Truman should be brought up on trial posthumously. It's amazing to me. She compares freeing the slaves, atomic weapons, and the Trail of Tears for indigenous people and their slaves all in one thing. This woman is nuts. Absolutely nuts.
He did that boldly and decisively without fear of prosecution. How then does a new president, a future president, need such boldness to come from the fiat of the Supreme Court?
Now, why do they need the boldness from the Supreme Court? And what the hell's going on with her left eye? But anyway, why do they need the boldness from the Supreme Court? Because of a-holes like you that want to prosecute former president for basically nothing. Nothing. That thing in New York's a joke with the Federal Election Commission. You know, they said the changing of records, business records, is a misdemeanor at worst. But it's a felony because they tied it in with Federal Election Commission law. Well, they never said when you commit a misdemeanor to cover up another crime that's a felony, it's a felony. Okay, what's the underlying crime? They never told the jury. They never told Trump or his lawyers. You know, the one in Florida about the records, that's a joke. Joe Biden took those records. They say, well, John, he's president. No, he wasn't when he took them. That means he had to sneak them out. You just can't walk out with records as a senator or a vice president. You don't have the authority. But they won't prosecute because he's basically a dementia-ridden old man, and nobody would convict him. They would feel sorry for him. It's amazing to me. These people are nuts. They had their eyes set on convicting and jailing Donald Trump, the presumptive Republican nominee for President of the United States and former president. She asked, why did the Supreme Court say there'd be decisive action and bold on the president's part? They had to do this in order to stop morons like her and the rest of the media and the progressive Democrats from going after their political enemies. Never been done before, to my knowledge. Oh, there's probably been suits filed, but they all were thrown out of court for Truman, even probably Lincoln, and so on and so on. Well, what about the drone that your favorite President Obama dropped on a terrorist leader that killed an American citizen, his son? And then when somebody on Obama's staff was asked, what's the deal? He's an American citizen. The quote was, supposedly, the kid should have had a better father. You want to put him up on charges now of murder? Manslaughter at minimum. Is there a statute of limitations on manslaughter? I don't know. I know there isn't on murder. It's just amazing. You go through every single president. Look at the 13 service members that were killed in Afghanistan during the withdrawal. We get to put Joe Biden on trial for that now? Trial for incompetency? It's just amazing to me. Absolutely astounding. Every single president, living and dead, would have been prosecuted if people like you were around and the progressive Democrats. Make no mistake. So why did the Supreme Court step in? Because of morons like you idiot. And to all you French speakers out there, idiot. I don't know what they're going to pull next. God only knows. Be prepared for anything, and I mean anything. They're having a bad week. Joe Biden self-destructed on national TV live. Now the Supreme Court's ruling on immunity for presidents. They're having a tough week. And like a wounded animal in the corner, they're going to lash out. And God only knows who they're going to hurt or what they're going to do. They are desperate. And desperate people and desperate organizations do crazy things. What do you think? Until the next time, God bless, goodbye, and good luck.